We are currently in the golden age of AI SEO, GEO, AI visibility, or whatever else you might call it. It's currently so easy to manipulate things like ChatGPT, Google's AI overviews, Google's AI mode, etc., that it feels like trying to rank on Google 15 years ago before they passed the infamous Penguin update in 2012. The Penguin update targeted web spam and manipulative link practices, penalizing sites using unnatural backlinks, keyword stuffing, and link schemes to game rankings. Its goal was to reward high-quality editorial-earned links and de-optimize, over-optimize anchor text profiles. It fundamentally shifted SEO from link quantity to link quality and relevance. GEO right now feels like the good old days of SEO where you could buy these cheap backlinks, really spammy tactics, and everything was working. Tons of exact match anchors. It was just the wild west of SEO. If you've been following me for a while, you probably know that I used to own a 7-figure link building agency, which I've exited. But what you might not know is that I started a GEO services agency recently with a partner, but I ended up backing out after a couple months because it just wasn't really a good fit for me. Why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because I feel like I've been around these gray/black hat tactics for a while. I've been using them for pretty much all of the time I've been doing SEO, even though I'm definitely more on the white to gray hat side these days. But I just feel like I have some really good insight into how things work, what's risky, what's not risky, how I expect these AI platforms to respond now that people are using all of these old school tactics again, which ones you can use safely, which ones you should stay away from, etc. So that's exactly what I'm going to be talking about in today's video. All right, let's get into it. So I'm Chris Jesus, and you can click the link in the description to go to my website to learn more about me or if you'd like to work together. And you can also sign up for my mailing list to get instant access to my shared SEO documents folder, which includes things like my AI editing checklist, my backlink vetting checklist, how to get a free press release, which is something you might want to try out after I talk about this kind of gray hat tactic in today's video. And before we jump into how risky everything is and which tactics you should be using, first let's just go over some of the more black hat tactics that people are using these days to influence LLMs. And then I'll go over some of the more gray hat ones that quite aren't as dirty or nasty or risky. And I'll go over this stuff pretty briefly because the video is not supposed to be about exactly how to do these tactics. You can head over to my channel and look around because I've definitely got more videos on that. While we're over here, guys, if you're enjoying the content, go ahead and give the video a like and give my channel a sub. It helps me out a lot, lets me keep making this stuff for you. So black hat tactic number 1 is using expired domains. Expired domains are great for influencing LLMs because LLMs like to achieve consensus. So if you have a bunch of different websites all saying that your brand is the best for whatever, then there's a good chance that the LLM will just repeat that. And expired domains, of course, have some backlink authority to them because that's the whole point of an expired domain. They're a lot more powerful than a fresh domain because a fresh domain has no backlinks, but an expired domain has all of this pre-existing backlink authority, which can then help it actually rank on Google, and it can help it be more noticed by things like Google and the LLMs. I was talking with my friend Callan, who's the owner of SEO Domains, a few months ago, and he was actually pretty excited about all of this shift towards LLMs and whatnot, because SEO Domains, of course, owns a shit ton of domains. So guess who's sitting on a huge stockpile of ammunition to use to say anything you want about your brand? I don't have any affiliation with SEO Domains, no affiliate link or anything. Callan's just been a friend of mine for a long time. The second black hat tactic is using hacked sites to get brand mentions or just to say whatever you want about your brand. If you've ever seen link insertions or niche edits for really cheap, there's a good chance that they might be hacked links. I'm not saying that anything shown here is necessarily a hacked link, but just something to be aware of. So these end up being a solid black hat tactic because they are a lot cheaper than getting normal links or normal brand mentions on websites because, of course, they're not done in a legitimate way. The third black hat tactic, and a lot of time this is done on these hacked sites as well, is they will use white text on a white background or black text on a black background so that you can't see that you're getting a brand mention, that you're getting positive brand sentiment on the page. However, they're definitely inserting it there. The next black hat tactic is using super cheap, super toxic PBN links to do the same exact thing. Of course, these really cheap PBN links are even cheaper than something like a hacked link insertion. A lot of the times you can find deals like 1,000 PBN links for a few dollars. It's actually kind of crazy. And again, on these PBN sites, they're doing the exact same thing. They're creating listicles. They're saying good things about your brand, why you're number one in your industry. So these are the worst of the worst black hat tactics. These are the most spammy ones that I've seen. These are the most risky ones that I've seen as well. And of course, using something like hacked links is not exactly the most moral thing to do. And then aside from those, we have some other tactics that I consider gray hats. Some people might consider black hats. So I'll just mention them here really quickly. And those are using things like cheap press releases, Reddit manipulation, doing listicles on guest post websites or competitor comparison articles or alternative articles, using influencers or affiliates to spread good things about your brand on the internet, and just getting more brand mentions when you're doing things like guest posts and link insertions instead of just getting backlinks. And I talk about these a lot more in depth in this video on my channel right here, I believe. So do these tactics work? Absolutely, or people would not be using them. I've seen all of them working. And in a lot of cases, especially the more black hat ones, they are super cheap to do, super easy to do. And it really is the golden age of GEO. But of course, there are counter arguments to this. So I actually saw this article by Nick Leroy. I've heard his name around and about his newsletter, but I don't know much about him myself. But I did see this article on a roundup, and it kind of inspired me to make this video. So I wanted to just go through his article really quick, what he's saying about these black hat GEO tactics, and give my input as someone who's been, especially more in the past, using a lot of the black and gray hat stuff. He says, just like the Backstreet Boys, back and better than ever, but probably for a short time only. And I'd agree with him. I think a lot of these tactics will be only working for a short time. However, I think some of them, the LLMs will have a very hard time dealing with, just like Google has, but we'll get into more of that in just a minute. And just remember, I'm not trying to sell you anything here. I don't have any skin in the game. I don't have a GEO services company. These are just my honest opinions. First of all, he's talking about how AI services are the next big scam, and I definitely wouldn't say they're a scam. You give them money and they do what they say they're going to do, right? They actually increase your AI visibility, and it's pretty easy. Just like over on Fiverr, you can get them to raise your Ahrefs DR for just a few dollars. I think it's like $50, less than $100 for sure. But these services are definitely not scams. They do raise your DR, and they raise it within a week or two, very quickly, very high DR. However, it doesn't really help your SEO, but I still wouldn't call them a scam because they do exactly what they say they're going to do. But I would say these AI services are actually much less of a scam because they're not just trying to inflate some metric. They're actually getting you more visible in AI and LLM. So anyway, I don't like when people call these things scams. Over the years, a lot of the more super white hat people are always calling the more gray and black hat tactics scams, but it's not a scam if it works. You don't have to use them, but it's not a scam. It looks like, first of all, he's talking about listicles on these cheap PBN sites. Of course, a listicle is when you say, hey, here are the 10 best SEO services, and you list yourself as number one, and you do this on a bunch of different articles on a bunch of different websites, whether they're PBNs or guest posts or whatever. Then he talks about buying brand mentions. Brand mention is, of course, when you just have the mention of your brand in an article and you don't even really need the backlink. They don't need links to get this kind of information. Here he's showing some of the results of some kind of no-name brands showing up with these very well-known agencies. How you can easily find the listicles that they're creating for themselves by going into Ahrefs backlink report, filtering by the word best, and then of course all of them will come up. If you want to do these listicles on these cheap PBN sites, I definitely would not be linking to your website. I would do it completely unlinked so you don't hurt your SEO or anything like that. Because right here, he's talking about a lot of these cheap PBNs actually have clear footprints and you can trace them quite easily. So Google will be able to do that too. So anyways, if you really use the real spammy, real cheap stuff, definitely don't link to your website. He says, when I put time into client work and my own projects, it's about building something that lasts. I'm in this game as well. This is why I've shifted more towards a white/gray hat approach than the more spammy black hat stuff. But for the rest of us, it's worth talking about two key risks. He says, back in the day, PBNs could boost sites for years before Google caught on. That's not going to fly this time. AI and LLM systems are evolving way faster. If I can play SEO, CSI, and uncover these networks in a few hours, you can be certain that engineers with PhDs will train models to detect them even quicker and at much larger scale. And I do think a lot of these tactics will not last for very long. What I think is going to happen is that they will just raise the bar for authority, just like Google had to do, and they don't listen to all this like cheap, really low quality spam stuff. The problem is that Google has years or even decades of an advantage of doing this stuff for much longer, where someone like ChatGPT have basically just entered the game and they have no idea how to do this stuff, right? So that's why in a lot of cases, they're actually using Google search results because Google has filtered things a lot better than they do, or maybe that Bing does. So yes, I think adaptation's going to happen, but I do not think that you would get a penalty from it either. But I'll talk about that more in a minute. Next up, he says business longevity risk. I was going to harp on wasted money here, but that's only part of the issue. If you play games, you have to be ready for revenue spikes and heart-wrenching crashes. Remember when Panda and Penguin rolled out, many businesses have learned the hard way that hitching their future to hacks is a losing bet. Are we in for something similar in the future? So again, he's basically saying they're going to adapt quick, and then when they do adapt, you might get a penalty or something. And I just also want to say that people have been saying that all link building was going to come to an end and that backlinks don't matter anymore and that Google's going to catch everyone buying links. They've been saying this for literal decades, and people are still building backlinks, and it's still having a very good impact on SEO if you just do the bare minimum of doing things correctly, right? If you're doing things like target URL diversity, anchor text diversity, link diversity, getting links on relevant websites, not just going crazy and doing a bunch of spam, then it's actually quite safe to build backlinks, and it's very easy to never get caught. And aside from that, Google used to give you penalties. They used to just say, okay, you're buying backlinks, so we're just going to take all your traffic away. You're going to go straight down all the way to the bottom. You're going to lose all your traffic. You're done. However, they don't really do that anymore. Now, what they basically do is in these Google spam updates, they say, okay, X amount of links that you're using, we don't think are very good anymore. So what we're going to do is we were giving you rankings here before. Now these links don't count anymore. So we're taking those away. And now your rankings are just going to go to here. So instead of giving you a big penalty where you lose everything, it's just that they devalue what was giving you benefits before, and they no longer give you that benefit. And I actually think this is a very good way to do things and a much better way to do things, because guess what? If they didn't do this, then negative SEO or negative GEO becomes very easy. That means I could go into Fiverr, I could go buy 1,000 PBN links, send them to your website, spam the crap out of you, and get you a Google penalty or get you a ChatGPT penalty very easily. But I think this is a bad way of doing things because it just opens the door for that negative SEO, right? It makes someone with $100 or $200 into a weapon. You could just go and literally do this to all of your competitors, get them all penalties, knock them all down, and then go about your day. So business longevity risk, I really don't see any risk at all here. Of course, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. This is just my opinion. I don't know the future. I'm just hoping that they're as smart as Google and they won't open the door for this negative GEO. And then, of course, adaptation happens quickly, so all of these black hat tactics could get devalued. And if that happens, then you could lose any money that you potentially spent on them. But the good thing about these super black hat tactics is they are super cheap, meaning that even if you use them, you might not lose a lot of money. But anyway, it'd be a decision you need to make as far as if you'd be okay with losing all of that money. Oh, and here he's saying exactly what I was saying before. Instead of these old school penalties, I suspect we'll see LLM updates more like Google's core updates, those that quietly devalue specific tactics until they're essentially worthless, which is exactly nail on the head. That's exactly what I think is going to happen. And let's be real, as long as algorithms exist, manipulation will too. The trick is finding strategies that give you visibility without putting your whole business at risk. And of course, I completely agree with that. It's all a trade-off. It's all up to your risk tolerance. Are you willing to take the risk? Or are you not willing to take the risk? Are you willing to lose this money? Or are you not willing to lose the money? I side on building things for the long term and siding much more on the gray/white hat side these days because I want these projects to last a long time. I want to be able to sell them for lots of money, and I don't want any issues. And of course, if I'm working with clients, I'll never jeopardize my client's business unless they were, well aware of what we were doing and they were very aggressive and they wanted to do this kind of stuff. But that would be a full conversation we'd have to have about it. Then he talks about how legit mentions are better than manufactured hype. I tend to agree with this one as well, but especially for the little guy, this manufactured hype, whether it's from buying brand mentions, using a little bit of these more gray hat tactics, or even just doing normal link building, the link building that people consider white hat these days. I think that doing this stuff, you could consider it manufactured hype, and it's very good for the small guy before you're able to get these legit mentions. But in a perfect world, you would do this stuff kind of in the beginning, and you do it carefully, and you do it smartly, and not in a way that'll get you in any kind of trouble. And then you would eventually graduate once you get to more of a budget and you're making more money through your business because you've done good SEO. And you can graduate to different marketing strategies where you're generating these legit brand mentions, legit positive brand sentiment, naturally without having to do all this other stuff. But especially in the beginning and for smaller companies, they don't always have the budget to do all of this stuff. Then he talks about getting on stuff like Clutch and Trustpilot and G2 And yeah, all of that is good, of course, but it's definitely not enough, right? It's just not enough. Anyone can get on these things unless there's really something wrong with your company and you're really illegitimate. But this is kind of just like the starting point, right? It's going to take a lot more than just that. Then he ends with saying, go ahead and game the system if you want. Remember that robots don't send you referrals, people do. Now, I'm gonna have to disagree with this last one because robots definitely do send you referrals. I've got clients ranking in ChatGPT, I'm sure you do too, with completely manufactured brand mentions and whatever, and they're getting referrals from ChatGPT. So really quick, just to recap what I think is gonna happen. Of course, what's working right now will obviously change. Right now, it's crazy easy to manipulate these LLMs with these really old school, shady SEO tactics that haven't worked on Google for a long time in many cases. For the sake of the credibility of the AI, I hope that it actually does get fixed soon because it's a little too crazy. It's a little too easy right now. But then I would say the best case scenario is that their systems will become about as good as Google systems are right now. The super cheap, super black hat, super spammy stuff, I think will get devalued pretty quickly. The cheap PBNs, tons of expired domain use unless you're doing it very smartly, really cheap hacked links on spammed out websites, using stuff like white text to blend in these hacked links. I think all of this stuff is only going to last for this very short window, like Nick was talking about in his article. But then I think they're going to have a very hard time dealing with other stuff. And that's stuff like listicles and articles on, high-end guest post websites or on more legitimate websites, using things like influencers and affiliates, manipulating Reddit in a smart way, in a long-lasting way. I think they're going to have a very hard time dealing with this stuff, and I don't know if they will ever really be able to deal with it. But I think what they're going to do is they're going to raise the bar for authority. Whereas before, maybe they said, oh, you only need low DR, DR20, or even DR10, in the case of a lot of these really cheap PBNs, for us to pay attention to you. I think they will definitely need to raise that to something like DR50, DR60, whatever. They'll just make authority a lot more important so that it becomes a lot harder to manipulate them with these really cheap black hat tactics. Then I think all this super spammy stuff will get devalued. You won't get a penalty, but I think you'll get devalued and it just won't give you any benefit anymore. And then I think they may also tweak freshness a little bit because I think right now these models just prefer freshness a little too much. They weight it a little bit too heavily, which can make things easy to manipulate with these cheap press releases and whatnot. 50% of Perplexity citations are from 2025, but there's a bunch of articles out there. You can read more about that. And while we're talking about cheap press releases really quick, again, one more time, go ahead and sign up for my mailing list and then you can get this document right here, free press release. This tells you how to get a free press release from EIN. You can only get one per email address that you sign up with. And you can use this to actually change what ChatGPT thinks about your brand and how it's recommending things. I actually did this for myself. I put out a press release when I sold my old link building agency and used the press release to teach the AI that I was doing more stuff about like AI and SEO agency and all this other stuff rather than just link building anymore. And this is one of the tactics that I think the LLMs will have a hard time dealing with. I don't think that they're going to completely discount press releases because you can do press releases in a legitimate way and not in a black hat way. So just know that people have been fantasizing about the downfall of black hat SEO, the downfall of link building for the same time. And I think the exact same thing is going to happen with all these GEO tactics. Time moves on, tactics evolve. Some tactics get devalued, but the black hat folks evolve as well. They get better at what they're doing. They start using different little tweaks, different systems, and they figure it out all over again. And the cat and mouse game will just continue to go on. So just remember, proceed according to your own risk tolerance. Remember that any money spent on the, especially more super black hat stuff, I think could just vanish one day. However, if you're just doing some of the more gray hat stuff like listicles on good guest post sites or doing stuff with Reddit or press releases, I think they're gonna have a pretty hard time dealing with this. They still work for SEO. I think they'll still work for GEO for quite some time. All right, guys, that's it for now. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and give the video a like and give my channel a sub. It helps me out a ton. Link in the description if you'd like to work together. And be sure to subscribe to get instant access to all my SEO documents, including the free press release that we talked about earlier. Thanks a lot, guys. See you next time. Bye-bye.